Welcome to the Real World Podcast. This week's episode is genuinely one of the best episodes we've had so far on the Real World Podcast. It was my pleasure to be joined by multi-millionaire takeaway mogul Ajmal Mushtaq. Ajmal is the owner of Boss Pizza, and he's also the owner of the biggest takeaway operation in Britain, Mushtaqs Takeaway. Ajmal is also my neighbour, so I was lucky enough to be able to have a conversation with him about the keys to his business success, his strategy for taking on pizza giant Dominos, and genuinely, this podcast has some great golden nuggets and advice for anyone starting out on entrepreneurship and looking to scale their business. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Ajmal Mushtaq, welcome to the Real Wealth Podcast. Thanks so much for giving us your time, and more importantly, thanks for coming here to do this, because there's nothing better than sitting across the table from each other.
Delighted to be here. Thank you very much for having me on.
No, you're more than welcome. So you and I think, have a similar sort of backstory insofar as we both left successful corporate careers to go and start our own business. So I guess the most obvious question to start is, what possessed you to do that, to leave a successful corporate career in London? I think both you and your wife had successful careers to come back up here and start your business.
So I was working for a top-tier management consultancy. I was at a senior level, and we were in a meeting, and in that meeting was one of the business partners, and he was very senior. And it dawned on me, wait a minute, if I work my ass off for another 15 years, I'll be at your level doing the same shit.
Yeah.
No thanks. So at the age of 35, I had fuel in the tank, money in the bank. I was 35 years old, and for me, I thought, I've got the best 10 years ahead of me. Do I want to spend that working for someone else, or do I want to run my own business? And I decided to run my own business, and it was the best decision ever.
If you'd made that decision earlier, say in your mid-20s, do you think you'd have been ready at that point, or was it just the right time at 35?
I think 35 for me was a perfect time. You've still got youth, you've got experience, you've got some money saved up. So it's almost like all of the elements came together at the right time.
Yeah, and it's a very similar story to me. I was in charge of an oil and gas operation in Azerbaijan for 5 years. We negotiated this massive contract with BP. It was about $500 million. And we got to the end of that project. The company had made somewhere in the region of $20 million more than it should have on the P&L. And they gave me a special one-time bonus that was $12,000. And I thought, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I doing this for someone else? What legacy am I going to leave? There'll be no memory of me being involved in that project, unless I start to create something for myself. So that was the breaking point for me. And, that's what started it again in my mid-30s. So, a lot of similarities there. So,
do you know, it's interesting. A lot of people working in the corporate environment really rate themselves. They're big shots. It's very, very easy to be a big shot in a large company where you've got 1,000 safety nets.
Yeah.
So one of the things I thought is I really wanted to test my business acumen. And one of the ways to do that is to go out there in the real world without a safety net. And that's where you test yourself. Yeah. So for me, I think that's a true test of an entrepreneur. If you can go out there in the real world and make it. And I don't pay much. I don't pay too much. I don't give the people who are in a corporate job talking about entrepreneurship. Yeah. They don't get too much of my time.
I think that's the difference, though. When you're in a corporate job, you have a very specific role within a niche.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're an entrepreneur, you have to have a much broader view. You have to be able to dip in and out and understand different roles. Maybe not perfect them, but understand them.
Yeah.
And that's the big learning curve, I think, for a lot of people making that transition.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, you decided to pack up from London, move back up here and start your own business. So take us forward from there and what your kind of next steps were.
8 billion people wake up every day and they think about food. So I thought food has got to be the best business in the world. It's something that people think about, all day, every day. By the time you finish breakfast, you're thinking about lunch. By the time lunch is finished, you're thinking about dinner. Yeah. It's not like getting your car fixed at the station. It's not like getting your car fixed at the garage. You go maybe once a year, or you go shopping maybe once a month or something for clothes. Food, you need to think about it every single day. So the process of selling food is actually much easier than selling anything else. And customers come to you. So that's why I thought has got to be the food business.
And it kind of goes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, the first most fundamental thing we need is we need to be fueled, we need to be fed.
Yeah.
And, you know, that is a primary instinct that we have.
Yeah.
But I guess in the context of food, though, the food industry, you must have realised that, you know, I think the statistics are like 60% of restaurants fail in the first 3 years. So, you know, what was the self-belief that you had that you knew that you wouldn't be one of those statistics and you would be successful in it?
I had the experience. I had money to invest in the business. I had a work ethic that was sickening. And I knew from my immigrant parents, there's a way to success, and that is just work your way to success. Yeah. There is no other way. You can work 30 hours a day if you want to do. Like, I've seen my parents as well, like immigrants, you know, they came over to this country with nothing. And, failure was not an option. So I've got that inherent in my being, that mentality that I can do whatever it takes. I'm not of the ilk, oh, I finish at 5 o'clock. Oh, weekends. No, I need the weekends to myself. I'm not like that. I can work all day, every day. So there was that. And then I just knew food. I knew I was good with food. I've got a really good palate. I'm passionate about food. And for me to cook, for me to make, cook, deliver really tasty food at a good price point, that was a key thing. It really is as simple as that.
When you were starting out in your business, did you have anyone who was sort of a mentor you looked to? Was, you know, you said your father was in business. You know, what was the driver, or was it really just the experience in your corporate life? Or
so I was brought up in the restaurant business. I've worked in the restaurants. I've waited tables, you know, when I left school with no education. Left school with no education, waited tables, worked in the restaurant business. And that's where I learned a lot about the food business. So that was a really valuable time for me. Then I had the corporate experience. Yep. Then I had savings. So adding all of those together in the mix, you could create a food business, but just run it at a totally professional level. And that's what set us apart from the competition.
I guess having had that experience in your younger years, would you say that you developed a passion for food? Were you going into a business that you could stand back and say, right, I'm passionate about this, so I'm going to put in that effort to make it work?
If you want to be successful at anything, you increase your chances if you're absolutely passionate about it. I was obsessed with food, obsessed with flavour. I would have, when I was working in London in a corporate job, I would have cooking parties in my house every weekend. I would have friends over, would cook, eat, and every evening I would actually cook a new dinner for myself. So that was unheard of. My peers thought I was crazy, but I just love food that much. You know, I'm really something I'm really passionate about.
It is a fantastic thing when you find passion in something like that. I used to love cooking in my younger years. I worked as a chef for a little bit when I was at university, and I loved it.
Yeah.
But now with a busy life and all that, I really struggle to get back to it. And Amanda's not interested, so you know, I really need to make the effort with the cooking. But there's nothing better than having family around, and it's such a community type thing, you know. Food can really bring people together. So no, I understand that. So we get to a point where, right, you're ready, you're starting. Take us from how you started the business to creating Mushtaqs, one of the biggest takeaway operations in Britain. You know, what was the journey? What would you say the key drivers are in creating that success? And what was the time period as well, you know?
Right. Within 5 years, I grew Mushtaqs to being the biggest takeaway operation in Britain. And this is how I kicked ass. And I've got it written down so I get my numbers right. I used to arrive at work at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Finish at 3:30. That's 7.5 hours, right? Then I used to go home, have a rest, have some food, and I would be back at work at 4:30, 5 o'clock. Then I would work till 11, 12, 1 in the morning. Every single day, I was working 2 days, 7 days a week for 6 years. That works out at 4,368 days, right? Now you take any regular job, and the normal working days per year is about 260 days, right? 260 days multiplied by 6 years. So my competitor is working 1,560 days.
Yep.
I'm doing 4,368 days in the same amount of time.
Wow.
So in any field, you take someone who is obsessed with their craft and give them a 2,800 day advantage.
Yep.
You're never catching up.
Yeah.
That's how I won the day.
How, as an entrepreneur starting out, when you are working all those hours and you're putting the graft in, how do you prioritize your time? How do you know what things you should be working on day to day?
Right. I learned very quickly. It took me 4 years to figure this out. As an entrepreneur, you have got to put on many different hats every single day.
Yep.
It took me 4 years to figure this out. Spend 45% of my time promoting my business. There is no point doing a good job if no one knows about it.
Absolutely.
Spent 15% of my time on the front line with the customers, customer facing. Spent 15% of my time quality controlling my product, and 15% of my time motivating, enthusing, engaging the staff. That was my formula. And then there's a final 10%, and that final 10% would be all of the admin for the business would be done at the end of the week on a Friday after.
I think this is a really, really important point to drive home, because for me, that's I think the big difference between success and ultimately people who just don't quite make it is those strong-willed, really being passionate about your time, how you're going to spend it, where you're going to focus it, what the value-added activities are, because it would be very easy for you to spend 14, 16 hours a day working and be running in circles because you're not prioritizing, you're not going through your high-value activities. What do I need to get done today that is going to move the business forward to the next level? So many entrepreneurs and people starting out in business, they just don't get that point. And especially if you've come from a corporate background where everything's structured, everything that you do is based on timelines, deadlines, reporting standards. You know what you need to do month on month. As an entrepreneur, you're sitting there thinking day one, what do I need to do today? And it's getting through that journey to say, right, I know what the value-added activities are. I know what's moving my business forward, and become religious, because I'm sure there was things day to day that, were shouting for your attention. And if you're not rigid about how you're going to spend your time, it would be easy to get dragged away with the day. And, that's still a challenge we have every day. As soon as you're in the office, you've got people coming in your door every minute looking for your attention. So much so that I've been reading a lot recently about, I think it's the impenetrable working time where you're kind of saying, door shut, I'm focused, don't disrupt me. And it's really not easy to do, especially when you want to keep the rest of the operations moving and the staff, guided. But it's an interesting one.
It's a very good point. I'm going to tell you something. In my office, I've got a 6-minute egg timer. See if I'm starting a task, phone call, someone wants to meet me, egg timer, switch it on.
Okay.
And I've got my eye on that. 6 minutes. So within that 6 minutes, I can do probably 90% of what I need to do.
Yeah.
And you're right, in business, in the corporate world, you sit down and have a 1 hour meeting. I bet most of those 1 hour meetings could be like 15-minute meetings.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important to be efficient with your time and not get distracted from your goals per day. Forget the week, forget the year, forget your long-term goal. Every single minute of your day has to be accounted for, and it's got to be adding value.
Yeah. Incidentally, I've got an egg timer on my desk as well, but for a different reason. I read somewhere, I think it was Stephen Bartlett's book, it's a reminder that time is finite, and that you need to be very protective over your time, because, time is just the most valuable asset, ultimately way more valuable than money. It's about protecting it as much.
Just going back to what you were saying, like what made me successful.
Yeah.
And I think for any business, you can do what the competition are doing, but just do it 100 times better across the road. If you are thinking about running a business, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You could do what someone is already doing, but just do it 100 times better across the board. So for my business, if the competition are delivering in 1 hour or 45 minutes, we would deliver in 29 minutes. If the competition answer their phone in 5 rings, we would answer it in 3 rings. If it takes 4 minutes to process an order, we would take 2 minutes. So what we did is we took every single component of the business and just made sure we did it 100 times better than the customers, than the competition.
How do you ensure those metrics are being met within your business when you've got a large-scale operation, and as you grow, you've got more and more operations going on? How do you make sure that you still get those metrics met and you understand what areas of the business are not performing where they need to be?
It actually gets easier as the business grows. So the more people you have, so for example, then we're a dedicated phone team, and it's very easy to motivate a team to answer the phone within one ring. They would give me the metrics. But when you're a growing business and you're putting on, and everyone is putting on different hats, it's more difficult to monitor the metrics then. But as the business grew, had managers in place, people had very defined roles, and it's very easy to train, motivate, enthuse, and then measure the success of each role as well.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. I mean, it's clear to see that road, and it's just the differentiator. So you don't necessarily believe in a USP as such. It's more the sum of marginal gains from all these various different things.
USP, unique selling point, is bullshit. I've put this video out so many times. USP is only reserved for inventors. What are you doing, Alex? You're renovating property.
Yeah.
You're renovating property. What's unique about that? There's not. How many people in the UK are renovating property at the moment? Thousands. So the way you're going to gain advantage is by making sure you're using better quality windows. You fit out your kitchens to a higher standard. You fit out your bathrooms to a higher standard. Your marketing is more slick. You take every single component of what you do and you just make it better than the competition. That's how you set yourself apart, and that's what enables people to be successful in business.
I think that's really sage advice, and I think as well, as you enter very, very crowded marketplaces now, there's so, especially with the advent of the internet, there's so many businesses out there, there's so much distraction. You know, really to set yourself apart, it's just doing everything at every level the right way, and that's something we're working on in our business, particularly our construction company, of just trying to get more systemized, more in the detail. You know, trying to improve the designs by keeping the cost down at the same time, so we can provide a better product, but still at that low price point.
Another thing I would say on that: never be afraid of your competition. So I started Boss Pizza 2.5-3 years ago, and we have only got one aim, and that aim is to go after the Dominos market. We're not interested in competing with little takeaways. We want to be a successful pizza chain, and we're not scared of Dominos, and we are up for the challenge, and that's the market we're after.
So I think that's an interesting one. So let's talk a little bit about Boss Pizza. Mm-hmm. When did you start it?
Started it 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
And, you know, a massive target to compete with Domino's, with over 1,000 branches, I think, across the UK. So you are going for that countrywide domination of what's the roadmap in your eyes of how you get there?
So 3 years on, we've got 3 branches open and 1 opening in London. Mm-hmm. And you might think, oh, that's not great. There's a lot of talk, but there's not much action. But behind the scenes, we've built the franchise model, we've built the franchise distribution centre, we've built the logistics capability for the whole of the UK. We have spent the last 3 years building a solid foundation. Yep. And then when the business starts to grow, it's going to be very easy to scale up. Yep. So we're doing all of the hard work now, which is going to make our life much easier, and it's going to allow Boss Pizza to grow much faster in the next couple of years. And
I think there's a really interesting story around this, which I guess is a cautionary tale for this sort of model. Is, you know, when Pizza Hut, the Carney brothers were doing the initial public offering, but I think back in the late 60s, they had to improve their profitability ahead of floating on the stock exchange. And they only had about 14 restaurants that they owned and operated. The rest were franchised at that point. But they had a lot of franchises that were given out in the early days on very low profitability, and they had to monetize them. So what they did is they consumed those franchises into the organization. They gave shares in Pizza Hut in exchange to the franchisees, and they went from 14 owned and operated restaurants to 130 just before their IPO. The IPO went well, $11 initial float to 32 in day one, so tripled the stock. Yep. Within 6 weeks of that, they raised $5 million, and they lost it all in the first 6 weeks because they had all these franchisees that were now part of Pizza Hut still operating like individual independent franchisees. In some instances, the managers of those were going to the bank directly to get money to loan and expand, and the organisation had no control over it. And now, because they were part of Pizza Hut, they were getting that money. So it was just completely out of control because they didn't have the systems, they didn't have the processes. And actually, at one point, post-IPO, Pizza Hut were bankrupt.
Right.
And they managed to trade through it over the next couple of years. But I think it's just a really interesting story of the dangers of that model if you don't have those foundations right at the start.
I think if you want to run a business, if you want to get rich, one of the best strategies is to do it slow and steady.
Yeah.
See the guys that come out the racing blocks 100 miles an hour, run out of steam very quickly.
Yeah.
So slow and steady, that's my business strategy. Slow and steady wins the race. I'm not in a rush to grow Boss Pizza into like a huge company. Right now, I know it takes time, and we're going to take it step by step, one step at a time.
We always talk about that with proper investment before you get started, getting the foundations right, making sure that your tax structure is correct, because that can really screw you up, making sure that you've got your systemization done. You know the core power team you're going to use for your refurbs, for your rentals. For your, we scaled up from 0 to 200 in 3 years, and honestly, it was probably too fast. Right. We spent the last couple of years having, the agent that we had broke. They couldn't manage the volume that we had created, so we had to move to a national. That was a really painful process, but we're there now. We're kind of through the other end of it, but there are definitely some cautionary tales from this fast growth, because it does take a bit of time, and thankfully we've managed to go through our growth and get ourselves to a point where we've stabilized the business. But it did create chaos for a while, so yeah, there's definitely some advice to be given on the scale and speed at which you want to grow, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the franchise model and how it works, and kind of how you're broadly structuring this, the Boss Pizza. Because, and for people who don't know, maybe explain a bit of what the franchise model is.
It's very simple. What we do, we charge a franchise fee. That gives a franchisee the ability to open up a shop, let's say, for example, Birmingham. We organise finance. They can open up a Boss Pizza and get up and running. But this is where we're going to win. We are not greedy. Our royalties are so low, it's actually ridiculous. We charge £500 per month royalty, regardless of whether you do £10,000 per week turnover, whether you do £30,000 per week. So our franchise and expansion strategy is very simple. We want to make the franchisee as much money as possible. And if we're doing that, the franchisee is going to come back to us and say, right, I want another one. And I want another one. And my friend wants one. That's the way that we're going to grow the business. Whereas a lot of franchise businesses, they get too greedy up front. Yep. They want too much from every franchisee. We're playing the long game. I would rather have hundreds of branches. I would rather have 100 branches where they're all making really good profit, rather than having 500 and they're all just doing a bit of rubbish.
Yeah.
So the key thing is to maximize the profit for the franchisee, and they're going to grow our business for us.
Yeah. So how heavily involved are you at the front end in the startup and operations of a new Boss Pizza? Because I remember this story of I'm sure McDonald's run their franchises for a period of time before they'll sell it onto a franchisee. But, I guess the tale is really of just ensuring that the standards get met, that the experience for the customer is consistent across the board.
Yeah, so what we do is we've got a number of different options. We're very hands-on. We could actually set up a shop, get it up and running, train the staff, get it up and running, make sure the sales are at X amount, and then hand over the keys to the franchisee if they want that. If they want to start off from zero themselves, they can do that. So there's flexibility, and I think that's very important, because some franchisees might want to be hands-on from day one. Other ones might just want to take a hands-off approach, take over a running business. So whatever they want, we've got the capability within our team to deliver whatever they want.
I remember the story of Ray Kroc and McDonald's, and I remember this point of a realization he had, where he realized that the franchise, his finances in the early days of McDonald's weren't great, because he was selling these franchises off fairly cheaply. And I think he came to this realization that predominantly his business was going to be real estate as opposed to burgers, where he would own the bricks and mortar of the franchisee. They would pay him rent, and because he is, McDonald's as a massive brand as the tenant, then the value of that commercial property goes up exponentially. Is that something that's in the back of your mind, or are you entirely focused on growing the franchisees at the moment?
I think for me, I don't want to get greedy. I want to make sure the franchisees are making as much money as possible. And if they want to own their property, that's fine. I think in 2023, it might be the wrong approach to say, right, I want to make money from the property. I want to make money from the food that I'm selling you. I want to make money from your sales. I think that model now is actually much more difficult to execute. And for example, Pizza Hut, the Pizza Hut royalties are 19%.
Wow.
Total. That's why Pizza Hut delivery takeaways are closing down left, right and centre.
Yeah.
It's 3% for the tech, it's 8% for the royalty, it's 3% for marketing. So caution, don't get too greedy because you could end up shooting yourself in the foot.
And actually, incidentally, I did see that you're opening up a Boss Pizza in a previous Pizza Hut location. So I guess that's an opportunity for you as well. As you start to shut down, you know, you've got an opportunity to go in there.
We are looking for closed down Pizza Hut restaurants because they've got the licenses in place, they've got the ventilation, they've got the walk-in cold rooms, they've got the total infrastructure. So for us, it's a very light cosmetic makeover. We don't need to spend 6 months arguing with planning permission. So that is part of our strategy. Papa John's and Pizza Huts, if there's any closed,
you're on them.
We want to know.
It's. I mean, I do think there's a massive opportunity in the commercial property market just now because, you know, you just have to look at most of the high streets. You know, they're dead. You know, but people are leaving. Retailers are leaving at an incredible speed, and COVID has just kind of accelerated that. So it's very easy to pick up cheap commercial property, albeit maybe not in the best areas, but you can pick up property fairly cheap. And the challenge is getting a solid tenant in, and a commercial property is only worth the value of the tenant that's in there and the length and strength of the lease, and you have control over that because you're building a brand and control. So I do think, you know, there is a massive opportunity there in between all that.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you something. So we're in Hamilton. For our listeners, we're in Hamilton. Do you know Montrose House?
Yeah.
66,000 square foot office. Do you know how much it sold for?
No idea.
£205,000.
Wow.
For the listeners, just anyone watching this, the council bought it for £8 million about 10 years ago, and they've sold it for £200,000.
That's incredible.
And something else you touched on, it's not just a case of, oh yeah, I'll buy that for 200,000. Everyone, well, not everyone, lots of people can afford £200,000. I mean, a one-bedroom flat on the same road costs, 120,000. But the business rates for that property are £170,000 per year.
Yeah. And that's where the challenge comes in. And we have dabbled into commercial property. We've done a few commercial residential projects. And at one point, we owned 5 buildings on Falkirk High Street, all with the aim of putting about 60 flats overall, commercial residential conversions. Thankfully, most of them were listed. So that is one of the exemptions that you get on commercial rates. But that's what a lot of people don't realise. And that's the big risk in commercial property is if it's empty, you're on the rates, unless you've got some form of exemption, and they are kind of few and far between. We unfortunately were kind of promised from Falkirk Council there would be a bunch of grants to help us with the renovation and conversion of these projects, but aside from one that we've just completed, we sold off the other 4 buildings, and because we got them so cheap, we managed to recover our money, but we weren't able to do what we wanted to do. A combination of factors. COVID didn't help. Then following Grenfell, the building standards massively increased on what needs to be done, even in these listed buildings, trying to retrofit fire safety systems and, you know, all of the fire separation and all that. They expect new build standards within listed buildings that are, you know, quite awkward to convert to start with. So it just became, without significant council funding to support it, unsustainable as a business model. But the opportunity remains, is there's a huge amount of commercial property there that is going for pennies because of the challenges with the rates and all that. And you know, it's an opportunity if you can find the right thing to do with it, you know. Okay, so I think on the Boss Pizza, I guess one of the things that, you know, that there are, I gather, quite a lot of challenges in the industry involving consumer preferences and, you know, the whole veganism, health thing. You've got all the delivery apps and the dynamic that they bring, rising costs of supplies, technology, blah, blah. You know, I could go on for a while. What do you see as the biggest challenges to your industry just now, and you know, what is your kind of strategy in dealing with it? Or
do you know, I might be naive. I don't think the recession is going to stop people buying a £10 pizza. I just don't believe it. You know, we've been through recessions before. People might cut back the frequency, but they're not going to stop eating out. They're not going to stop ordering in a takeaway. Imagine if you go along to the supermarket and try and get the ingredients for a pizza. Yeah, you're talking a significant amount of time, a significant amount of money. Add in your time. It's actually cheaper picking up the phone or ordering on the app. So I think the pizza business is not immune, but it's not going to be affected as much as maybe people think it is. It's a £10 pizza. And that can feed 2 people. The big pizza is about £12. That can feed 4 people. So you're talking £3 a head. Go and try and feed someone £3 a head in 2023 is going to be pretty difficult, even at supermarket prices.
And I think there's another element that plays into that. Whilst there might be a big focus just now on health and well-being and healthy eating, but the reality is it's very expensive to do that. If my partner's obsessed with organic food and all that, and when I see her shopping bill, I choke half the time. So I do think there's definitely a potential shift with the cost of living insofar as affordability comes into play. And as you say, picking up the phone and ordering a pizza is going to be within most people's reach, but the expense of the ideal healthy lifestyle is just not there. What about COVID? How did that affect your business, and how did you get through that period? And I guess there was some massive opportunity in there as well.
COVID was incredible for our business because all the restaurants closed down, and I've got the biggest takeaway kitchen in Britain, and it just worked out perfect. We were set up with 55 people working in the kitchen, and all of a sudden the business just boomed. So we were very, very well placed to take advantage of the massive increase in consumer spending on takeaways.
I mean, it's almost like you had the crystal ball and you seen it coming.
Well, I recognised in 2009, the reason I built the biggest kitchen in Britain, right? The reason I built the biggest takeaway kitchen in Britain is very simple. So I started off with the restaurant, Mushtaqs, 36 seats, heaving the first weekend, absolutely heaving. And when I did the cash up at the end of the night, it was like, is that it? Because you're restricted by the physical capacity. And on the very first weekend, I changed the strategy of the business to focus on takeaway. And then we brought in the 29-minute delivery guarantee. That took off. And then I built a big kitchen. And then that just made business boom. I mean, we were outputting one meal every 15 seconds. That's freshly cooked. To 8 people packing orders, 9 people just processing orders on the phones and taking payments. It was absolutely insane. It was off the charts.
I think that might be a perspective shift as well. Coming from a big corporate career in London, you'll be used to the big numbers, and then starting your own business. Whilst a lot of people might have been comfortable with those numbers or happy with them if they were just looking to replace a salary or whatever, you obviously had that history of understanding the big numbers and big corporate, and it's like, how can we scale it? We had a similar situation. My business partner and I, in our first year of trading, we got to 40 properties, and there was a lot of hustling to get to that point, individual deals here and there, and we thought, right, how, this is all great, it's a decent enough income, but how do we scale? How do we go to the next level? How do we get to 300 properties in the next year? And it forced us to think differently, and it forced us to take different actions, and that's where we learned how to buy portfolios of properties, where we could buy 80 properties in one transaction, in one deal, and scale up that way. And as I say, it comes with challenges, but it's just the mindset of, how do I take it to the next level? And that's not built into everybody, I don't think. I think there is something unique within a lot of successful entrepreneurs that say, right, that's all good. What's next? What's the next level? How do we scale up?
It's a very interesting point. As an entrepreneur, you're going to be skint. So any money you make gets reinvested back into the business. So for the first 5 years, 6 years, my business was incredibly successful and it generated millions, right? But all of that money was reinvested into growing the business. So I think that's one of the things that perhaps I wasn't aware of. I didn't actually understand before this journey, before the entrepreneurial journey. I'm just going to be in a constant state of being bloody broke.
Yeah.
Even though my wealth and my assets are going over here, you know, I'm just broke all the time.
Yeah, I mean, if you strip all the cash out of the business, you just simply can't grow. And it is a massive realization for anybody that starts and scales a business. Is just the fact that you've never got any money. You know, you expect you can look on a piece of paper and see all your assets and net asset positions in the millions, and you know you're a multi-millionaire on paper. But the reality is you've got no money because it's all in the business, it's all growing.
Exactly.
You know, you can take a bit of a salary, but you don't see that initial, you know, change in your life.
Yeah.
Because it's all about the business, it's strength of the business, and as we know, cash flow is king in the short term with any business. So
another point on that. So when I started Boss Pizza, I started Boss Pizza because that's recent, and it was our dream to make it busy. And you know what? It just became incredibly busy. And then we opened up branches. But the one thing I never thought about, now I'm going to have to buy vans, and then from vans to lorries to bloody warehouses for storing pizza boxes. I can't buy a pallet of pizza boxes. I have to now buy lorry loads of pizza boxes. Right now we need pallet trucks, forklift trucks. We need to store them somewhere. We don't have any storage space. So if you have dreams of running a business, just understand this. You might actually be very successful, and that's going to take you down a road where you're going to be forced to spend as much money as you can to make sure that, you know, you're doing everything possible to give that business the chance of growth.
Every time you scale, your working capital requirements go up, and you know that's the harsh reality of being in business. I'm sure it gets to a stage where you can start to enjoy it, but you know, and this is the balance of that desire to level up and go to the next level and push it forward with how much of my life do I want back, and you know, not just in terms of money and finances, but time as well, you know, and balancing that out. And you know, if you were doing those hours in the start, there must have been other things that had to give, right? And in terms of your family life, and you know, I guess it wasn't time for hobbies. The business has to become the main hobby, right?
You're right. For the first 6 years, didn't take a day off, didn't have any holidays. Hardly saw my son for 6 years. He was just born at the same time we started the business. So no holidays, no time off, didn't see my family. And see, now when people see where I live and how I live, they think, oh, it's all right for you. Yeah, it's great for you. They don't understand the struggle and the sacrifice.
The sacrifice is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's all about having a bigger purpose and a bigger vision, and, you know, understanding that you're not just building a business, you're leaving a legacy.
Yeah.
So what strikes me is you're obviously a very highly educated person. You done law, and then I think you've done 2 masters after that, and you've got a qualification management accountancy as well. How important has all of that education been in your early years to your business journey now?
If ever there was a contradiction, right? Education is very important because it opens the doors into the large corporate companies. They want, you know, degrees from top tier universities, a lot of them. It's very important, but not a single subject I was taught at university is relevant in today's business world. For me, that's my experience. 5 years of business subjects, I'm not using a single thing I learned at university in running my business. Yeah. That tells you something.
It does.
Now, I think university is very good. You want to be a doctor? Yeah, that's great. You learn medicine and you study medicine, you become a doctor. You study dentistry, you become a dentist. But for business, it's a grey area. Imagine learning from a lecturer who has never run a business. What are they going to teach you about business?
Yeah.
Would you rather learn from a lecturer who has never had the experience of running their own business? Or would you rather learn from a multi-millionaire who's been through and had the battle scars and faced the hardships?
There's no competition. I think the challenge for most people is finding that multi-millionaire. But that being said, with the advent and the digital age of podcasts and audiobooks, there's more knowledge out there than ever. You know, I mean, Laurie and I didn't have a lot of exposure of entrepreneurship as, you know, in our early years. You know, everybody had a job around us, and it was never talked about. Didn't know anyone that owned their own business, and it wasn't really until our early 30s that we started on a journey of understanding what entrepreneurship is, and you know, how you move things forward. And you know, YouTube, podcasts, audiobooks. You know, I'm not a big reader because it makes me sleepy, but I listen to audiobooks all the time in the car. Those are massive. You know, access to billionaires now and multi-millionaires and their knowledge and experiences. So there's really no excuse now. You might not be able to sit down one-on-one with someone, but
you're right. There's so much knowledge out there. And one of the reasons I blew up on TikTok is because I'm actually giving out all of my business experience for free, and I'm not expecting anything in return. I'm not selling a book on the back end. I'm not selling a course. I'm just saying, if you want to run a business, here you go. And you can take whatever, you do whatever you want with that information. So I think there's more and more entrepreneurs out there that are happy to share their experiences, and it would be foolish not to tap into that free resource.
Absolutely. I mean, there has been a massive sort of explosion on Instagram, and you know, particularly the advent of all this AI technology now. I'm all following all these videos of people showing you how to use ChatGPT and Synthesia AI and all these amazing artificial intelligence softwares, and there's a lot of knowledge online that you can just get from shorts and these sort of short form content. So and I guess that's an interesting. So how important has social media been for you? How do you see it supporting your business, or is it just you giving back to a degree? And how much of your time does it take? Because you know, you are all over TikTok. You know, you've got a massive following there. I spotted you on TikTok quite early on, and the content is phenomenal. But that must take time, right? I mean, it must. Yeah. In amongst all these other businesses and everything else you try to do, as well as your massive house renovation that you're doing.
Yeah, it does take a lot of time, and it is expensive. You know, like I've got a full-time team working for me. They do the content, editing, posting. It's an industry in itself, actually. So it just takes a lot of time. But I love talking. I could talk to you about business all day long. So it's something I find quite easy. I don't have to rehearse. I don't have to read something out of a book. It's all knowledge that's in here. If you ask me a question, I'll tell you. Simple as that.
Is there anything that you do? So obviously you've built these businesses, all broadly within the same industry, and you know, maybe about commercial property investment in between that. But is there anything else that you do to diversify your wealth, or you know, are you investing in stocks and shares or any other type of assets, or you're very much focused on your businesses? And
am I investing in stocks and shares? The answer is no. The most valuable lesson I have ever learnt that has made me a multimillionaire today happened to me in my mid-20s. Remember the dot-com boom?
Yep.
I had £30,000 of my life savings. Stocks and shares, dot-com boom, everyone's talking about it. Every bloody person, prostitutes are turning into day traders, policemen are turning into day traders, doctors are leaving their jobs and turning into day traders. Everyone is into stocks and shares. Me as well. And then what happened is that 30,000 went up to 60,000, up to 90,000, up to 150,000. And I was like an expert trader, just like what here now.
Yeah.
And I lost it all in the crash. And that taught me a very valuable lesson. Whatever money I have to control it. I have no pension, I have no stocks, no shares. Every single penny of my wealth, either I control or it's in property, nothing else.
I mean, I think that's hugely valuable. We talk a lot about focus, and we always define it as follow one course until successful. You see way too many people that will come to learn about property investment, and then you see them the next week they're on a crypto course, and then they're looking at stocks and shares. And you know, it's so important. You know, no one will look after your money better than you.
Exactly.
You know, and I've never really understood people that go to these IFAs and, you know, or people that are looking to pull their money out from an IFA to go and do, and they will try every trick in the book to keep your money because they're making chunky commissions every year on it. But ultimately, they don't care. No one looks after your money better than you. But you need to educate yourself. You know, it's not a case of, right, I'm managing my money, I'll just throw it in at crypto, no idea what you're doing. Again, there's no excuse for not educating yourself just now because there's a wealth of knowledge out there.
See, had I not lost that money in my mid-20s in stocks and shares, I probably would have gone into crypto, and then tried NFTs, then tried bloody Chat GTP. That's a new buzzword. Everyone's into Chat GTP.
I'm just worried the kids will start going to use it for doing their homework, you know, and then not bother anymore.
That's okay. I think what you need to be careful of is the rise of the chat GTP experts that are now going to start selling courses. It's the same people that were selling NFTs, the same people that are selling cryptos. Now they're pumping up, chat GTP and all these AI courses. So that valuable lesson in my mid-20s taught me, just don't follow the trend. Just focus on your own path.
Yeah. Do you have any other tips that you would give to someone that's starting out on their own business journey?
Oh God, I've got so many tips.
Mm.
Right, give me a topic and I'll reel them off. I tell you what, let's do this, right? I've never done this before. Name any topic. So it could be people management, it could be facilities management, it could be marketing, branding, you name it. Just reel it off and I'll say something.
Let's start with marketing.
Marketing. Spend 45%, spend half your time marketing your business. Have at least 10 different marketing channels. So for our businesses, we've got 30 different marketing channels, and you've got to do it consistently, right? I was speaking to a bodybuilder, right? And I'm giving him business advice. He runs a business. I said, I tried it, Ajmal, it didn't work. And I said, look at my muscles. Look at the size of my muscles there. I'll put it to the camera. I went to the gym once and my muscles are still this size, right? You have to do it bloody consistently, day in, day out, or week in, week out, and then you get the results. Too many people think, they spent a little bit of money in marketing. It's not worked, right, and giving up. Right, marketing, great one. Next one.
Systemization.
Systemization. People come and go. Systems stay. Invest in the systems for your business, because that is what will guarantee consistency. And in business, consistency is king. So when I started my business, I didn't worry about training. I worried about creating the systems, and then I trained the people to that system. So if you leave my business, it's no problem, Alex. Thanks very much for your 5 years of hard work. Take you out, plug the next person in, train them up to the exacting standards. And if you've got that system in place, it's much easier.
Hiring staff and dealing with the challenges of them.
Hiring staff is dead easy. I used to put people through like a 30 question interview, points based. That's what we did in the corporate world. It doesn't work in the food business. So in the food business, every single member of my team is homegrown talent. They started at the bottom, and the bottom job is a sprinter role, which is to carry takeaways from the kitchen, bring them down to the front desk. That's like about a 100-foot walk, 100 back, 200 foot. I learn more about someone doing the sprinter role than I can in 1,000 hours of interview. In that one simple job of doing a 4-hour shift of bringing takeaways up and down, I learn more about their work ethic, their speed, their smile, their eye contact, their overall attitude. I learn more about that individual from that 4-hour task than I can from bloody 1,000 hours of interview.
Yeah. And I think it's an important point that a lot of entrepreneurs need to realize, and I didn't know this in the start, is you're not instantly tied to an employee. It's not like they all come loaded with all these employee rights day one when they start with you. There's a period of time. Most people put a probation period in the contract for a start. So we've found certainly in scaling our construction business where a lot of tradesmen can be a bit unreliable or maybe not have the best work ethic, that giving them a try, keeping a close eye, being very guided in what you ask them to do is the best way to get a measure of someone. Because especially a lot of these guys are not used to doing interviews and stuff. They might not come across well, but they're fantastic at their job, and that's been the learning curve from us. So next one I would say is managing finances, because a lot of people don't have that background. Obviously you come from a management accounting background. How do you get that knowledge at the start to manage the finances around the business? Managing finance is very easy. What they do in the big companies, they look at quarters. What we do in our business, what I've done from day one, is manage the business on a weekly basis. I pay all of my salary, all of my bills on a weekly basis. That gives me the accurate pulse of the business. As a business in health, right? We've had a quiet week, right? We really need to ramp up the marketing. We need to increase the sales. But if you were to do that in a quarter, 3 months you've lost. It's gone by,
3 months, and then we've had a bad quarter, right? We need to do something. So the way I manage my finances is I keep my debt to a minimum. I keep all of the bills paid that week, and I make sure all of the expenses are paid off each week. And even I used to pay the salary every week. Now I pay once a month, but just generally stay on top of your finances, pay all your bills, and that gives you an accurate pulse of the business. And the worst thing you could do for your business, see this thing about, oh, you've got 60-day credit or 90-day credit. Bad news, because 80 days down, you've forgotten you spent £2,000 on something, and 80 days later, right, okay, you get the reminder you need to pay this bill. That might be bad for your cash flow. So I like to just keep on top of the weekly expenses.
I think that's the beauty of that simplicity. When you're paying for things in real time, you know where you are every time. You're not dealing with accruals and deferrals and anything that complicates the situation. Yeah. But it is incredibly tempting at the start to make use of those 30, 60, 90-day terms, or even use the Amex and not have to pay off to the next month. But that's when you have to start having the support staff in place to be able to track the finances and, you know, keep tabs on that. Otherwise, you can get yourself in a real mess.
Do you know one of the most efficient things I do in my business, right? I'll need to make a video about this, is, see, when I get a bill, I pay it straight away.
Yep.
Right? Do you know what happens if I don't pay the bill? Right, and it's happened before because maybe I've been busy doing a project or something. Bill comes in, right, I'll just deal with that. 2 weeks later, I get a reminder, right, okay, that's 2 things I've done, right? Then I log on to my internet banking and pay it, that's 3 things, right? Then, while I've paid it, another reminder's on its way, right? Okay, then I need to open that and deal with that, that's 4 things. Did I pay that bill? Right, then I need to log on to my bank to check if I've paid it. Right, then I need to phone the company and tell them, actually, no, this bill's paid, can you not send me any more reminders? That's, for the sake of not doing one thing, I've now got 5 things that I've actually had to...
You can create a lot of administrative... And it's understanding that the more of these things you do, the more complexity you create around your business, the harder it is to track things.
And then you're busy, but you're busy doing nonsense. So it's very important to be efficient in your business.
Your suppliers must love you, though. Not taking advantage of those 30, 60-day terms. That must give you an opportunity to negotiate better prices, because everybody else is going to be pushing for those terms.
Oh,
right?
My suppliers love me. They say I'm the best because I pay at the end of every week, and there's never an issue with payment.
Yep.
Because that's a long-term relationship I want to have.
And we have a similar thing. One of our main wood supplier, Thornbridge, in fact, we use them for all sorts of things. Our monthly bill is about 30 grand, and they love us because we always pay. And like, okay, we use the terms, but we always pay. And it's incredibly rare for some reason in the construction industry that you pay your bills on time. You know, and I don't know how you could sleep at night when you're not paying your bills at night. You know, on time.
That's such a good point. I can't. If I owe anyone any money, I just can't get sleep. And it's happened, I owed someone £80 once, and I'm actually bloody chasing them. I'm like, can you give me your bank? I'm on the phone to them. I need you to send me your bank details so I can pay you. Because when I go to sleep at night, I like to go to sleep with the fact that, you know, I've paid everyone and I don't owe anyone any money.
Yeah, it's a nice way to be. Okay, so I always end the podcast with the same question, and that question is, what does real wealth mean to you?
At the start of my career, real wealth was property, money, cars, holidays. Now, I think I've gone through the journey. For me, real wealth is the ability to spend every evening at home with my kids, spend as much time as possible with my parents, and just generally have experiences with my family. So I think the definition of success might be one thing one day, but over a period of time, I've always had this flexibility in my mind. Your definition of wealth should actually change as you grow.
It's so incredibly common within the entrepreneur journey that you start from this position of, yes, I want to build a business and all this money so I can have this amazing car and house and all that. And through the process of the journey and the mental barriers that you have to get through to build a big business, to manage your cash flow, to appreciate the value of what needs to be done to create that, it changes your mind on what you deem to be the definition of success. You know?
It does. And you can't, that level of intensity, it's actually very difficult to maintain that year in, year out for like 10 years on the trot. So you do need to sometimes take a step back and reevaluate what's really important for you.
Yep. Ajmal, thanks a lot for this. Just to finalise, if someone's looking to get in touch with you or watch you on social media, how can they get in touch? TikTok
is the only thing I do.
Yeah.
I don't do Facebook, Instagram or YouTube. It's at Ajmal Mushtaq. That's my TikTok.
I'll put it in the show notes. So
yeah.
Thanks a lot.
thank you for having me. It was a really good conversation. Really enjoyed that.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, nice.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.